Phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I'd been awake since 5, sitting at my kitchen table in Nashville with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring at nothing in particular, the way you do when your mind won't stop running through the same loop. The accident had been 3 weeks earlier. A pickup ran a red light on Nolensville Pike, hit my driver's side door, and that was that. 3 cracked ribs, a broken collarbone, a mild concussion, and a torn meniscus in my left knee. I was 63 years old, and I felt every single year of it lying in that hospital bed. But the phone ringing at 6:47 that morning wasn't from the hospital. It was my daughter-in-law. I almost didn't answer. Beverly had called twice the day before, and I'd let it go to voicemail both times. But something made me pick up. Maybe I was just tired of avoiding things. Dad. Her voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice she used when she wanted something. How are you feeling? Still broken, I said, but getting there. We've been thinking about you constantly. A pause. That's actually why I'm calling. Clifton and I have been talking, and we really think it would be best if you had someone professional managing your finances while you're recovering. Just temporarily, until you're back on your feet. I set down my coffee cup very carefully. 31 years. That's how long I'd run my own HVAC company in Nashville. Started it with a second-hand truck, a set of tools I'd bought on credit, and more stubbornness than sense. By the time I sold it 8 years ago, we had 19 employees and contracts with 4 commercial property management companies across Middle Tennessee. I'd built that from nothing. And Beverly was calling to tell me I needed help managing my finances. I appreciate the concern, I said. I'm fine. Dad, you suffered a concussion. The doctor said. The doctor said I was recovering well and would be fully independent within 6 to 8 weeks. I read the report myself. Another pause. Longer this time. Clifton really thinks this is for the best. Put Clifton on the phone. She didn't. That was the moment I understood what this call actually was. I thanked her for checking in, said I needed to rest, and hung up. Then I sat there in my kitchen in Nashville, with the early morning light coming through the window over the sink, and I thought about the past 3 years. My son Clifton was 41. Smart kid, always had been. Got an MBA from Vanderbilt, which I was proud to have helped pay for. After graduation, he'd gone into commercial real estate development. Done well for a while, then hit a rough patch around 2019 when 2 big projects fell through back to back. That's when the calls started. Just a loan, Dad, just to bridge the gap. I'll pay it back when the next deal closes. I gave him the first loan because that's what fathers do. $40,000. The next deal closed and the money didn't come back, but I didn't push it. Then there was another loan, and another. By the time the accident happened, I'd given Clifton and Beverly a total of $206,000 in transfers and loans over 3 years, plus the down payment on their house in Brentwood, plus the lease payments on Beverly's Range Rover for 14 months before Clifton said he could take it from here, which lasted 4 months before he quietly stopped paying and the dealership called me. I paid it off. I don't know why I paid it off. I think by that point, I'd just gotten into the habit of fixing things for them. When I was in the hospital, Clifton visited once in 11 days. He brought flowers and stayed 40 minutes and spent most of it on his phone. Beverly didn't come at all. She sent a fruit basket with a card that said, "Thinking of you? Feel better soon," with a little smiley face drawn next to her name. My neighbor Helen had stayed with me more than my own son had. Helen was 68, a retired school teacher who'd lived next door for 12 years. She'd driven me to 3 follow-up appointments, picked up my prescriptions, brought over food twice a week. She didn't ask for anything. She just showed up. 3 weeks after I got home, Beverly called to suggest I needed someone else managing my money. I called my attorney that same afternoon. His name is Bernardo Cafor, and he's been my lawyer for 11 years. I told him what had happened. All of it. The loans, the car payments, the fruit basket, the phone call. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Tell me exactly what Beverly said." I told him, Okay, Bernard said. Here's what I think is happening. I think they're laying groundwork. Not necessarily for a competency petition right now, but they're building a narrative. The concussion gives them an opening. What do I do? First thing, we document everything. Every dollar you've given them, every date, every communication. Then we make sure your estate documents are airtight. And then, he paused, you stop giving them money. Just like that. It sounds simple when a lawyer says it. It's less simple when as your son. I spent 2 days thinking about it. I walked through my house, carefully, with the cane the physical therapist had given me. And I thought about Clifton at 10 years old helping me in the garage, the way he'd handed me tools and asked questions about everything. I thought about teaching him to drive in the parking lot of a church on Sunday morning. I thought about the look on his face at his MBA graduation, that mix of pride and relief. I'd been so proud. Then I thought about 11 days in a hospital and one 40-minute visit. On Thursday morning, I called my bank and had a detailed record of every transfer to Clifton's account prepared, going back 4 years. I then called Bernard back and told him I was ready to proceed. He drafted updated estate documents, adjusted beneficiaries, a revised will, a durable power of attorney naming Helen as my agent instead of Clifton, and I signed them the following week. Then I stopped the monthly transfers. I hadn't even realized I'd been doing a monthly transfer. It had started as a one-time thing and somehow become automatic. $4,000, first of every month, deposited into Clifton's account. I cancelled it. Bernard sent a formal letter to Clifton, advising him that the arrangement had been voluntarily discontinued and that all previous transfers were to be considered gifts with no expectation of further support. Clifton called that same afternoon. Dad, what is this? What letter? What are you talking about? Exactly what it says. I'm not sending money anymore. Dad, we're in the middle of a project. I told you about the Gallatin Pike development. You told me about 4 different projects over 3 years, son. None of them has paid back a single dollar. That's not fair, Clifton. I kept my voice even. It took effort. I was in the hospital for 11 days. You came once. Silence. I had the garrison closing. You had a closing. I had 3 garrison closing. I had 3 cracked ribs and a concussion. I'm not interested in who was busier. He tried 3 more angles. I didn't move on any of them. When he finally hung up, I sat down in my armchair and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not guilt, not sadness, exactly. Relief. The first 3 weeks after that were strange. My phone, which had been ringing regularly with Beverly scores and occasional Clifton check-ins, went mostly quiet. I had more time alone than I'd had in years. I finished the physical therapy exercises every morning. I started reading again, something I hadn't done consistently since before I sold the business. I had Helen over for coffee twice a week. Bernard called in the 5th week. I've received a petition, he said. Even though I'd half expected it, my stomach dropped. Competency? Guardianship technically. They're claiming the accident caused cognitive impairment that affects your ability to manage your financial affairs. They've submitted a letter from a Dr. Philip Hargett. I've never heard of that name. He's a physician in Franklin. Not your doctor. The letter suggests that based on a review of your recent financial history, meaning they're framing the cancellation of transfers as erratic behavior, combined with your concussion diagnosis, you may lack the capacity to make sound financial decisions. I was 63 years old, with a clean bill of cognitive health from my actual neurologist, a man named Dr. Sutherland, who had put in writing that my concussion had resolved without lasting effects, and my son had found a stranger in Franklin to sign a letter suggesting otherwise. Bernard, I said, I want to fight this. I know, he said. That's why I called. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the Davidson County Courthouse. I wore the same suit I'd worn to sell my company 8 years earlier, yo. It still fit, which felt like a small victory. Helen drove me. She didn't say much on the way there, which I appreciated. She just drove and let me think. Bernard was already in the hallway when we arrived. So was Clifton. He was wearing a suit I didn't recognize. Expensive, the kind Beverly picked out, and he didn't quite meet my eyes when we passed each other. Beverly wasn't there. I found out later she'd decided not to come. I think she thought Clifton could handle it and she didn't want to be on the record. The judge was a woman named Judge Patricia Moorfield. She was methodical. She reviewed the petition, looked at the supporting letter from Dr. Haggett, and then looked at the stack of documentation Berat had prepared on my behalf. The neurologist's report. My financial records going back 6 years showing consistent and rational management. The letters from my accountant. The statement from my actual physician. She asked Clifton's lawyer several pointed questions. When did your clients first become concerned about Mr. Hargrove's cognitive state? The lawyer said after the accident. Judge Moorfield asked whether anyone had obtained an evaluation from Mr. Hargrove's treating physicians. The lawyer said they had relied on Dr. Haggett's assessment. The judge looked at Dr. Haggett's letter again. Set it down. Then she looked at me. Mr. Hargrove, she said, is there anything you'd like to say? I thought about this. Bernard had advised me to stay brief and let the documentation speak, but sitting there, looking at my son's lawyer, I couldn't stay brief. Your Honor, I said, I built a business over 31 years. I managed payroll for 19 people, negotiated contracts, sold the company at a number that let me retire comfortably. I raised a son on my own after my wife passed. Clifton was 14 when his mother died. I've managed my own finances independently for decades, and in the 3 years before this accident, I voluntarily gave my son and daughter-in-law over $200,000 because I wanted to help them. The moment I stopped, they filed this petition. I'm not incompetent. I'm just no longer giving them money. Those are two very different things. The courtroom was quiet. Judge Moorfield looked at Clifton's lawyer for a long moment. Then she looked at the petition. This petition is denied, she said. The documentation provided by the respondent clearly demonstrates ongoing cognitive competency and rational financial decision-making. Furthermore, the evidence suggests the petitioner's primary concern is financial rather than medical. She set down the papers. I'm ordering the petitioners to cover the respondent's legal costs. $15,000, payable within 60 days. She looked at Clifton's lawyer. Counsel, I'd strongly encourage your clients to reflect on what they've done here today. The gavel came down. In the hallway afterward, Clifton tried to approach me. I kept walking. Not because I didn't have things to say to him. I had years of things to say. But because I was afraid of what would come out if I started. Bernard caught up with me at the elevator. That went about as well as it could have, he said. The 15,000, I said. Can they pay it? Unlikely. Which creates options for collection, he paused. Liens on the Brentwood property for starters. I thought about the house in Brentwood. I'd help with the down payment on that house. $62,000. 4 years ago. Let it go through the collection process, I said. Whatever the court allows. In the parking garage, Beverly was waiting by Clifton's car. When she saw me, she started toward me. I kept walking to Helen's car. You think you've won something? Beverly called. I got in the car. Helen pulled out of the space. My phone started buzzing before we reached the exit ramp. Beverly, I declined. She called again. Declined. She called again. Declined. By the time Helen pulled into my driveway 40 minutes later, I had 64 missed calls and 11 voicemails. I listened to the voicemails sitting on my back porch with a glass of iced tea. The first two were controlled. Dad, we need to talk about this. This was a misunderstanding. The third one started to crack. You don't understand what we're dealing with financially. By the seventh, Beverly had stopped pretending. You selfish old man. After everything we've done, after everything we've gone through because of you. By the 11th, she was incoherent with rage. I saved all of them to a cloud folder, sent copies to Bernard, deleted them from my phone. Then I went inside and made dinner. It was a strange few months after that. The Brentwood house, I learned through Bernard, had a second mortgage they'd taken out 18 months earlier that I hadn't known about. Between that, the accumulated debt, and now the $15,000 court judgment against them, Clifton and Beverly were in serious trouble. Clifton's skeleton pipe project had stalled completely. The financing partner had withdrawn. He'd borrowed against the project's projected returns to cover living expenses, and now those projections were worthless. I heard most of this through my granddaughter Addie. Addie was 16. She was Beverly and Clifton's daughter, and she was, without question, the best thing to come from their marriage. She was sharp and funny, and asked better questions than most adults I knew. She'd been calling me every Sunday since the accident. Her idea, not her parents'. We'd talk for an hour sometimes, just about whatever. Her AP classes, the novel she was reading, the boy in her AP history class she absolutely did not have a crush on. One Sunday in November, her voice was quieter than usual. "Grandpa," she said, "Mom and Dad are talking about selling the house. I heard something about that possibility. Mom is really angry." A pause. "She says it's your fault. Some people find it easier to be angry at someone else. Is it your fault?" I thought about how to answer that. Addie deserved a real answer, not a deflection. "Your parents got into debt," I said. "Some of that was bad luck, and some of it was choices they made. For a long time, I helped cover the gap, which made it easier for them to keep making those same choices. When I stopped, the gap came due, so in a way, I made it easier for longer than I should have. That part is on me." She was quiet for a moment. "But you needed them, and they didn't come," she said. "Yes, that's not your fault." "No," I said, "that part isn't." She asked if she could come visit over Thanksgiving break. I told her absolutely, and that I'd make the turkey chili she liked. She laughed, and for a minute she sounded about 8 years old, and I had to look out the window at my backyard to get my bearings. The house sold in December. Clifton called me the week it went under contract. It was the first time we'd spoken since the courthouse hallway. "I need to tell you something," he said. His voice was different. The smoothness was gone. "All right. I'm sorry." A long pause. "I don't know how else to say it. I'm sorry for the petition. I'm sorry for the letter from that doctor. That was Beverly's idea, but I went along with it, and that's on me. I shouldn't have." I didn't say anything. I let him keep going. "I've been thinking about what you said in court, about raising me after Mom died. I remember those years. I remember how hard you worked, and how you never once made me feel like a burden, even when things were tight. And I turned around and—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I treated you like you were an account I could draw from. And when you closed the account, I tried to have you declared incompetent. That's what I did. I can't explain it except to say I'd stopped thinking of you as my father and started thinking of you as a resource. I don't know when that happened. I'm not sure I even noticed until the judge said it out loud. I was sitting in my kitchen again. Same chair, same window, different light. It was December now, gray and flat. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I needed you to know that I understand. Not because I want anything. The house is selling. We're paying the debts. Beverly and I are—" He paused. "We're not in a good place. She thinks the answer is to find a way to get things back to how they were. I think the answer is to figure out how I got here." Another pause. "We are going to counseling. Separately. I'm not sure the marriage survives, honestly." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it, more than he probably expected. "Addie's doing okay. She's good. She's better than either of us deserve." "She is." I looked at the window. Outside, my neighbor's dog was trotting across the yard. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. "I want to be honest about that, what you did. The petition, the letter from a doctor who'd never examined me. That wasn't just hurtful. That was trying to take away my right to make decisions about my own life. You understand what that means to a man who's been independent his whole life. I understand, but I'm willing to have a conversation. Not now, but eventually. If what you're telling me turns out to be real over time. He said that was more than he expected. I said it was more than he'd earned, so we were about even. After I hung up, I sat there for a while. The kitchen was quiet. The coffee maker made its usual hissing sound as the heating element cycled off. I thought about my wife, Patricia, who died of ovarian cancer when Clifton was 14. She'd have had strong opinions about all of this. She'd always seen through pretense faster than I could. She would have cut Beverly off 2 years before I did. And she would have been right. I thought about the question Clifton had asked himself. When did I stop thinking of him as my father? I thought about my own question. When did I stop expecting him to show up? I didn't have a clean answer to either. The house sold in mid-January for $612,000. After the second mortgage, the court judgment, and the remaining debts, Clifton cleared about $190,000. He bought a two-bedroom condo in East Nashville. Modest, sensible, nothing like Brentwood. He told me he put $120,000 into savings and was living on his actual salary from a development firm that had brought him on as a project manager. No more independent deals for now. No more borrowed projections. Beverly had moved to Muddispole into an apartment near her sister. She and Clifton had filed for divorce in February. Addie stayed with Clifton during the week for school and went to Beverly on weekends. She texted me most days, little things. A funny thing her teacher said, a photo of her cat, a question about something she was reading. I texted back every time. In March, I had a good week with the knee. The physical therapist said I was ahead of schedule. On Saturday morning, I drove myself to the farmer's market on 8th Avenue for the first time since the accident. Walked the whole thing without the cane. Bought tomatoes and sourdough and a jar of local honey that I didn't need but bought anyway because it felt like celebrating something. Helen met me for coffee afterward at a place on 12th that we'd started going to on Saturday mornings. It had become a routine without either of us quite deciding it would be. You seem lighter, she said. I had a good week. No. She shook her head slightly. Not just this week. Generally, you seem lighter than you did 6 months ago. I thought about that. I spent a long time, I said slowly, keeping things from collapsing. I'd get a call, something would be falling apart, and I'd go fix it. And I told myself that was what being a good father looked like. But I think part of it was also just, I didn't want to feel the thing that would happen if I stopped. The grief of it, the acknowledgement that my son had turned into someone who needed to be managed. Helen wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. And now, she said, now I've felt the thing, and it turns out it didn't kill me. She smiled. No, it didn't. I looked out the window at the March morning. People walking by with their farmers' market bags, dogs on leashes, a couple sharing a pastry on a bench outside. I'm going to reach out to Clifton next week, I said. See if he wants to have dinner. Just the two of us, no agenda. That sounds right. I might be wrong about him. He might slide back. He might. But I'd rather find out I gave him a real chance and he blew it than spend the next 10 years wondering if I cut off too soon. Helen nodded, picked up her coffee. Your wife would have said the same thing, she said. Eventually, after she was done being furious, I laughed. It surprised me. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere genuine rather than politeness. Yeah, I said, in about that order. Addie came down from school in April for her spring break. She spent 5 days at my house, which was the longest stretch I'd had with her in years. We made turkey chili the first night, and she talked me through the plot of a novel she was reading for AP Lit, with the kind of intensity only 16-year-olds bring to literature. We went to the Parthenon on Wednesday. She'd never actually been inside, which seemed impossible, and she took pictures of everything. On Thursday afternoon, Clifton drove over. I hadn't told either of them the other one was coming. Maybe I should have, but I'd learned that sometimes people need to end up in the same room before they'll actually look at each other. Addie hugged her father for a long time. Then she went out to the back porch with her book to give us space. I appreciated that about her more than I could say. Clifton sat down at my kitchen table. He'd lost weight, but in a way that looked like discipline rather than hardship. He looked tired and also, for the first time in years, actually present, like he was in the room instead of managing it. "Thank you for the invitation," he said. "I made enough chili for three," I said. He looked surprised. And then for just a second something crossed his face that I hadn't seen since he was a boy. Something unguarded and real. "Dad," he said quietly, "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything tonight. Just eat dinner." He nodded. We sat at that kitchen table for 3 hours. Addie came in after a while, and the three of us talked about nothing important and everything important in the way that families do when they're trying to remember how to be a family. We talked about Patricia, her grandmother, his mother, and that was hard, but the good kind of hard. The kind that reminds you who you are. Before Clifton left, he shook my hand at the door. "I'm not going to ask for anything," he said. "I just want you to know I meant what I said on the phone. I'm trying to be different." "I'm watching," I said. "That's all I can offer right now." "That's enough." He walked to his car. Modest car now. A 3-year-old Honda. Nothing like the Lexus Beverly had chosen. He drove away in the dark, and I stood at the door for a moment before I went back inside. Addie was washing the chili bowls at my sink. She looked over her shoulder. "Was that okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "It was okay." She turned back to the dishes. I got a dish towel and stood next to her and tried what she washed, the way I'd done with Patricia on 1,000 ordinary nights. The kitchen was warm. Outside, the Nashville spring was doing what it does, tentative and sweet and then suddenly extravagantly alive. I was 63 years old. I built something from nothing and sold it well. I'd raised a son alone. I'd watched that son become someone I didn't recognize, and I'd stopped pretending I didn't see it, and I'd paid the price for that, and I'd survived it. I'd also let a neighbor drive me to appointments and become my closest friend. I'd watched my granddaughter grow into someone worth knowing. I'd learned finally that helping someone isn't the same as enabling them, and that the difference matters more than you'd think. Clifton might keep his word. He might not. Beverly was gone, and I was not sorry about that. Not exactly. Though I was sorry about the life she'd chosen and where it had led her. Some people learn. Some don't. I couldn't control which kind of person either of them turned out to be. I could control which kind of person either of them turned out to be. I could control whether I kept showing up for Addie, for myself, for whatever version of a relationship with my son turned out to be worth building. That was enough to work with. That was, honestly, more than I'd had 6 months ago. I'd put the last bowl in the cabinet. Addie dried her hands and reached over and squeezed my arm once, the way teenagers do when they mean more than they know how to say. I patted her hand. "Early start tomorrow?" she asked. "Farmers market's at 8, I said. She grinned. "I'll set an alarm." We turned off the kitchen light and the house went quiet. Outside, Nashville hummed and glittered the way it always does at night, that particular combination of old and new, country and everything else, that makes it unlike anywhere I've ever been. I'd chosen this city 40 years ago and it had given me a life. It was giving me one still. And if you liked this story, please leave a comment below, subscribe to Sincere Revenge Stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. The next story is on the left. I've thought a lot about the word incompetent. It's a legal term, but it's also something else. It's a verdict on a person's entire life. 31 years of running a business, making payroll, negotiating contracts, raising a son alone after his mother died, and the argument being made in that Davidson County courtroom was that I could no longer be trusted to decide what to do with my own money. That argument fell apart in about 40 minutes, but it's the kind of thing you don't forget. Not because it hurt, though it did, because of what it revealed. Here's what I've come to understand about how things like this happen. It rarely starts with cruelty. It starts with convenience. I made it convenient for Clifton and Beverly to not have to try as hard. Every time I transferred money without asking questions, every time I paid off something without saying a word, I was quietly communicating that the consequences of their choices would be absorbed by someone else, me. And they heard that message loud and clear, even if none of us would have used those words at the time. That's not blame, it's cause and effect. What you consistently allow, you consistently get. The hard part isn't recognizing that now. The hard part isn't recognizing that now. The hard part is that I genuinely believed I was helping. There's a version of generosity that's really just avoidance, dressed up in a better story. I didn't want to have the hard conversations. I didn't want to be the father who said no, who made his son uncomfortable, who let things get difficult when I had the means to smooth them over. I told myself I was being a good father. I was also being a convenient one. Those two things are not the same. What changed everything wasn't the accident itself. It was the silence after. 11 days in a hospital and one 40-minute visit. You can rationalize a lot of behavior from the people you love, but there are moments that cut through all the rationalization and just show you plainly what's true. That visit was one of those moments. Not because Clifton didn't care at all. I think some part of him did, and still does, but because caring had become secondary to comfort. His comfort. And that's what happens when a person has never been asked to put themselves second for someone else. The muscle doesn't develop if it's never used. Addie is different. She's 16 and she figured out how to show up on her own, without being asked, without anything in it for her. She calls on Sundays. She drives 3 hours to visit. She washes dishes in my kitchen and asks real questions. I don't think she's a better person than her father by nature. I think she's had to develop a different kind of strength because her circumstances required it. That's the thing about difficulty. It either breaks people or it builds something in them that ease never could. Clifton is trying. I'm watching carefully. The way you watch something fragile and new, not sure yet whether it will hold. I'm not naive about it. But I also know that people can change when the old way of living stops being available to them. Whether he does is his choice to make and his life to live. What I know for certain is this. The man sitting in my kitchen in March, eating chili he didn't ask anyone to pay for, working a job he actually showed up for. That man had more dignity than the one who'd handed my money around for years. Sometimes the most useful thing you can do for someone is simply stop catching them before they fall. Not out of anger, out of respect for what they're capable of becoming. I'm 63. I walk without a cane now. I go to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings and have coffee with Helen afterward and text my granddaughter about books. That's a good life. It's mine, fully and without apology. And I didn't get it back by fighting for it dramatically. I got it back by quietly deciding I was worth showing up for, even when the people closest to me had forgotten to.